And now, Team Bring It, it's just too contrived, and I don't, I'm not buying it. He's not getting over on me, so.
Yeah, and one promo, even 2, 3 coming up, and then one big one at WrestleMania, I can live with that. But it's not. It's going to end up being, 15, 20 promos and one lame-ass match. And that's another thing, coming back to another thing. They built this whole show around Rock, and it's just as much Vince and the WWE's fault as anybody. But when you the man spent 20 minutes in the ring telling us how great WrestleMania was, and while he's doing it, he's taking time away from what should make WrestleMania great.
Right.
Okay, so, moving on. San Martino's had some surgery recently. He's supposed to end up with a heart of a 40-year-old, as they put it, after his
I read that.
rehabilitation and whatnot. I mean, the man's 75 years old. I mean, there's no real, of course, point to this now besides, where our heroes of yesteryear are today. But, just thoughts on Bruno's recent
Well, yeah, I mean, as has been, my want, as much as I can, Bruno was, my first guy, and, kind of my childhood hero, in a way. So, I'm glad he's, it sounds like the surgery, it was some kind of heart thing or something from some illness he had when he was young, and it sounds like he's going to be better than ever. He's never going to, I never want to see him in a ring again, and I don't think he's ever going to do it again. But wish him well. I think, it's criminal. Well, I guess he's as much to blame as Vince, but, any Hall of Fame should start with Bruno Sammartino, in my opinion. So,
especially from the company that, he reigned in.
That he built, essentially kept going for nearly 20 years, for Christ's sake. Whatever. But, he hates Vince, and he hates what the product is, and I guess he feels Vince committed crimes against him, and then, of course, has totally destroyed the business that he loves so much,
Yeah, Vince is an underhanded sucker, and I don't think anybody could argue that point. I don't know. Bruno's kind of stuck in a time warp, and, he's 75 years old.
Get over, I kind of, in a way, appreciate the fact that he is, maintain K-Fob. So he's going to maintain that to his death, man. I never bladed. We've seen some lousy blade jobs that he's done. But he maybe should get over that a little bit and at least talk a little bit about how it, it was a work, whatever. But
yeah, when you talk about horrible blade jobs, it's got to be like him and Sabu for just complete lack of caring if anybody sees him doing it. I've never seen a guy just literally blade himself in the corner so obviously in history. And granted, his time was before cameras could switch angles and so forth. It just, I don't know, guys usually fall down and grab their head and then kind of try to, cut themselves while they're rubbing at their head. But this
Right. Well, there's one famous one that I saw where it was a pretty obvious one like that. I don't remember what match that was, but
I just seen him sitting in the corner blading himself so many times.
On the K-Fob a little bit, though.
Yeah, and, I don't know, more power to Bruno, and I'm kind of glad he doesn't, that he's willing to not, relieve his grudges with Vince, but everybody's, and the fact of the matter is, with or without Vince, wrestling would be a completely different, situation now. And people say, well, without Vince, wrestling would have never got to this point and that point. It's a bunch of mess. Cable and the need for, television shows would have created wrestling. Now, where it would be, I couldn't say. And it may not have happened as soon as Vince got it going. But, to just blame Vince for the state of wrestling,
Well, you know what? To me, Vince obviously he revolutionized. Whenever that was in mid or early '80s with Hulk Hogan and the cable, and raiding other places and expanding his territory and doing all that crap. It was business, and he he wasn't out to hurt anybody. He was just out to make his business better, and he revolutionized wrestling in terms of doing that. I mean, I think part of the predicament we're in now, just to leap ahead though to Vince's crimes, and maybe it's not even a crime again, it was just business, but the real death knell, and I think why we're in where we are now is, you know, he's the only game in town. He bought out WCW, who was his biggest competitor, and there's nothing now. TNA, yeah, but it's TNA is really just a bunch of old, you know, mostly WWE rejects. They're not, a lot of them aren't rejects, but you know what I'm saying. The fact that there's, and that's why we're in this sort of, with WWE now, this lull, because there's nowhere to get, you know, you're getting new talent from Tough Enough or NXT or whatever, but before there were other federations, there were other territories, and you'd bring this guy in for 6 months or a year, you'd bring this guy in for 6 months for a year. Now there's none of that happening. You have a stagnant roster, and I think to me that's the biggest problem why it's so boring now, is that the roster's stagnant, but that's because Vince owns the whole thing.
Yeah, well, and I've been saying for a long, long time, too, that until there is competition or WWE bottoms out, and I'm not so sure that's even got the ability to do it. I mean, WWE was bottoming out in 94, 95. And I'm sorry, and you know, despite the fact that they were babies bitchy, I guess. Anyway, I'm going to cut the Divas part because, like any two good wrestling fans, we've gone way off on the tangent, which is exactly what I was hoping for. This is, I've been awaiting our first conversation.
Yeah, the Divas, I mean, I wanted to see Karma. You know, right now, the division's a wreck, and the two people who you want to see, Gail Kim and Beth Phoenix, you don't get to see. So,
I remember Gail Kim showing up way back when, you know, several years back now at this point, and every week I saw something new out of her. And
I know she's good. She's a talented,
just absolutely amazing.
Performer.
And of course, we all know the reason. She doesn't want to or will let them put giant tits on her. And therefore, you might as well just give up your I quote unquote main event talent, you know. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, you could be the champion, or you can just come out there for a tag match. It doesn't matter. They're all just getting 5 minutes anyway with their little prop belt.
Right.
So, anyway, moving on. Anonymous GM thoughts. Now, this thing's kind of gone on for some considerable time. At this point, and it's like I've been saying forever, you know, leaving it open is twofold. One, you know, it gives them a chance to really maybe sign a big name at some point and get them to introduce by being the GM, you know, and it has the ability of, you know, whoever the GM is brings their own clout. Say it's Bischoff, you know, is the GM of Raw. Now, Bischoff only has as much clout as Bischoff has, but this guy being anonymous, he can say whatever he wants. He can do heel things, he can do face things. I mean, it just leaves it so wide open. I mean, I don't see him, you know, cutting this anonymous part of this GM out for some time. Even if they did, I have no clue who it would be. I doubt they know who it would be. And, you know, and until they think they have to make that decision, I'm sure they won't. Thoughts on that, and thoughts on maybe who it could be?
Well, I agree with you 100%. I mean, it's actually a pretty good little gimmick or angle that they got going on with the anonymous GM. It's much better than you know, having a face on it. So, I mean, that part works, and I don't ever see them, you know, really needing to reveal who it is. You know, it's good. It's this nebulous thing. You know, it's like this voice. It's the voice of God in a way. Unfortunately, speaking through Michael Cole, but you know, it becomes more powerful that you don't know when you don't know who it is. It's the mighty powerful Oz. You know, who's the man behind the curtain there. So it works for me.
And exactly, and once the curtains moved.
Right, then you see the guy fumbling with the thing behind the curtain, and it loses all its impact. So, it's a good gimmick, good angle. I like it.
Who could eventually take over the role that wouldn't be a disappointment?
Who I think it could be?
Yeah.
You know, when the reveal, if it ever comes, I just think it's going to be Mr. McMahon. for want of anybody else. Or maybe could it be something as lame as Stephanie being it? But I can't see them bringing in somebody else, like bringing Foley back and then he's revealed because he wasn't there all that time. It has to be somebody who's been there the whole time, or else how do you sell it?
Or at least nowhere the whole time.
So McMahon's there. Is it maybe Shawn Michaels? You know what I mean? It has to be somebody who's even though he's not there, but he has history, you know what I'm saying? I can't see them bringing an outsider in, so it has to be something. Maybe it's Hornswoggle, I mean.
That's WWE rules' choice almost every time when this comes up.
Right.
Hornswoggle. Hell, might as well be, dude.
A question, quick thing on I think you said least favorite. Least favorite is Hornswoggle. I never, when Hornswoggle comes on that show, I just want to, to the bathroom, to the refrigerator, checking the Yankee score or whatever. I have no need ever to see that guy. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, when he was getting kicked back under the ring by Finlay, I was kind of enjoying that. Just how he was treated like such a piece of crap and thrown around and, all right, come out and do your thing, now get the hell back under the ring. That shit was funny with me, but...
That was okay. That was probably the best use of him, But right now, it's just pathetic. It's just going to be a joke.
Let's bring him out and get the awe factor of, oh, there's a midget, and he's constantly causing trouble. Oh, how exciting. Mm-hmm. Ooh. Okay, so this is kind of old hat a little bit, but thoughts on the Raw Roulette and the viewer's choice, and not so much just thoughts on them, but... Obviously, the viewer's choice was skewed, and I think the only reason that they didn't take enough time to try to make it not look skewed, and there was such a backlash. And despite what anybody thinks about the internet wrestling community not affecting WWE, when everybody lashed out about that viewer's choice, they obviously had to do something. Now, but then you turn around and you go a week later to the Raw Roulette, and you've got these backstage tape segments, where the matches happen. I mean. Del Rio gets into a cage match, and he's more worried about talking to Maurice, and I can understand that's his character, right? But the camera was more worried about him talking to Maurice than what the frigging match was going to be. And
right, yeah, I did pick up on that little thing. The camera was focused on.
And what a crock of shit. And I mean, then they pick cage match, and that's great. But I kind of long for a time when they do this Raw Roulette thing, and there'd be a cage hanging above the ring that they necessarily wouldn't use, and it kind of gave a. We all still knew we were pretty much being BS'd, but it gave this idea of, hey, the cage was there in case it got spun, and it didn't. They wouldn't just set up a cage for the sake of saying, oh.
It becomes so set up, you see the cage, and there's going to be a cage match, even though there's 20 other options that don't get picked. And how about, no count-out match. The stipulations are bullshit to begin with. Who cares? Oh, it's a no count-out match. Oh, that's really going to, scare me. And, and a few of the other ones were just so lame.
They put the Divas into a submission
anywhere,
match.
That's kind of okay. A street fight would have been interesting, but no falls, no count-out match. Who cares,
Well, then they put the Divas in a submission match, and my God, talk about the worst person to give. Hey, you need to have a technical ending to the match. Oh my God, they picked the worst group of people in the world to do that. Now, I must say that Kelly really wrenched back on some Boston Crab, man. That thing looked like it hurt.
Oh, yeah.
But, that's as good as that's going to get. Plus, women are typically more bendable anyway. Probably didn't even phase her. I'm sure she was in back drinking a pop and being happy as piss after that, Right. I don't know. That's... To have the wheel land on that.
Both of those things were bullshit. The viewer's choice was, and they got called on it because of,
I think it's
with the Sin Cara match, the Evan Bourne match. They got called on that one, and I think wasn't the Kofi Kingston one kind of messed. But a couple of them were messed.
Well, and the thing was, the first four choices all had the same percentages. And
percentages.
Yeah, and B won every time with 51 or 52%. And C had 25, and A had the rest. And then come the fourth match, A's got 52%, and B's got the 35, and C, it was the exact same percentages. And then finally,